Mark 1. Conversations at the speed of sound.
So I just came to the Sunshine Coast on an internship, and then, being right across the road from where I work, there was no way I was going to miss coming to the museum at some point. So I found a free day, came in, absolutely blown away by the collection here. And, it's really fascinating to see just all the different designs and everything that's going on here, together with the really passionate volunteers who run the place. It's been absolutely amazing having a look around.
The voice of an aerospace engineer by the name of Royce. Hello and welcome to this final Season 1 episode of Mach 1, the podcast of the Queensland Air Museum, Caloundra. My name is Garry Hills, I am a QAM volunteer, and I've saved this episode for last to focus on some questions about the place and importance of this aviation museum in the present day and into the future. Back to Royce. As I said, he is a newly graduated aerospace engineer, and he was visiting from Sydney. I got chatting to him as he was looking around our collection, and I was interested in his enthusiastic praise for the museum from the point of view of the inspiration that he derived as an engineer, specialising in design, from simply looking at and contemplating the wide variety of aircraft on display. You'll hear a little bit more from Royce in a moment, and then from two others. Aviation Australia instructor Steve McCann, talking about the current state of play in the aerospace field, and then from QAM President Bill Trail, about his vision for the future of this unique People's Aviation Museum in the context of that burgeoning aerospace field. Firstly, back to Royce for a couple of minutes.
So I'm interning as an aerospace engineer at Helimods across the road. So a lot of the work is focused on sort of mechanical design and that side of things. So I think being able to come over and look at examples of sort of existing designs and things that people have put a lot of thought into is something that's quite inspirational from just an engineering point of view, but also thinking about all the history and all the other decisions that had to go in behind the scenes. It was super interesting.
And I think the Starship caught your attention.
It did, yeah. Not in the least because I did a project on it in my, I think, second year of uni would have been. So all the sort of major features and all of that groundbreaking features on the aircraft, something that really stood out to me at the time. And then being able to see it in person is something that's really rare, I think, these days. So really appreciated that. We had to basically pick an aircraft that we found interesting, like personally interesting, and then basically just go into all the different aspects of its aerodynamic structures, and all of that is a pretty sort of junior course, so it was very broad, but just looking at all the things that made that aircraft unique and special. The Starship came up as something that was very revolutionary for its time, and arguably still is a bit of an icon in that respect. So that's what I went with and learnt a lot. And so being able to see it in the flesh was really kind of like sealed that little adventure right up. Yeah.
It's interesting to me, though, that sounds like the sort of thing that might apply to anyone who's in engineering, design, innovation, and so on. Would that be right, that there's inspiration to be had from seeing various projects from the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things about a collection like this is not just seeing the physical sort of mechanical aspects, but also thinking about, like I mentioned earlier, all the decision making that went into it, and you understand sort of the principles that people sort of imbued into these aircraft, and all those sort of political considerations and all of those, just all the context behind an aircraft. You can really see it like come through in all the different designs you got here. So it's really interesting to think about from that perspective.
Thank you, Royce. Thanks for visiting. And thanks for that perspective. Contemplating the wide range of aircraft on display at the Queensland Air Museum, and considering the pioneers who are featured in many of the displays, doesn't just inform our understanding of the past. It can inspire us to be a part of aviation in the present, and to dream about a role or a contribution to aviation in the future. But what is the current state of play in the aerospace field, and how important might an enterprise like the Queensland Air Museum be in that field into the future? I travelled to the Aviation Australia training facility in the Brisbane Airport precinct to speak with instructor Steve McCann to talk about just that. G'day, Steve.
G'day, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks for asking, and thanks for giving me the time to talk here. I'm fascinated to explore with you some of the things that might be possibilities and opportunities at the moment, because we hear a lot of things coming through the media, mixed messages about the state of the aviation industry in Australia, and I know that you've got your finger on the pulse and you've got your finger on the pulse of training as well. So Steve, tell us what's your background and what do you do at the moment with Aviation Australia?
Well, my background is straight out of school. I was in the military, did over a decade there, and then went into the private sector, and then found my way to aviation. And in my mid-30s, so I did an adult apprenticeship, and from there I've been with Aviation Australia now for over 10 years as initially first an apprentice and then a homegrown instructor. So been here now coming up to 11 years.
And Aviation Australia, you were telling me earlier, has a very wide reach across Australia. Where would people find you?
Yes, we do. So our main base of operations, or home port, is Brisbane, which is where you are now. So we've got our huge facility here in Baronia Road. We have ports, what we call ports, up in Cairns, Darwin, Alice Springs, Perth and Melbourne.
Now, you're an instructor in the line maintenance area in the Certificate 2 program, is that right? So what does that involve? What's your role? What do you actually do?
Yeah, my position is program instructor for the Cert 2 in aircraft line maintenance. So in 2016, we started this course here at Aviation Australia. We had 23 students enrol in that first course. It's done over a 2-year period, and the students are basically, I guess the easiest way to describe it is it's like a taster for aircraft maintenance engineering, and included in that, is modules on avionics, mechanical and structural. So the three trades of our trade, so that when they finish the Cert 2 in aircraft line maintenance, they can make an informed decision about coming into our industry, doing the full-time Cert 4 course when they finish school. So that initial course, we had initially started with 23, graduated 17. This year, we have 256 students enrolled in 15 classes over 6 ports.
That is incredible, Steve. No wonder you're busy. Now this, but that's very good news, isn't it? I mean, there's a sense of energy and enthusiasm there that we could talk about in a moment. So, if students were interested, they're currently in high school, they might be junior high school students or whatever, and they think this is exactly for me. Where do they go looking to find information about that?
Yeah, best place to look would be onto our website. So, aviationaustralia.aero, AERO. And click on courses, and the dates actually for the 2023 courses are already up.
Now, I wanted to ask you a slightly allied question, but it may not be exactly on that topic, and that's to do with the Aerospace Gateway for Schools program. Do you have involvement with that?
I have a little bit of involvement with it. Like, obviously, Aerospace Gateway Schools program is located here at Aviation Australia with us, and Natalie and Joe do a phenomenal job there in engaging with high schools throughout Queensland to introduce them to the aerospace industry. And as your listeners would know, that it's certainly a growing industry, and it's only going to get busier and busier and bigger and bigger.
So what things are covered by aerospace?
Well, I know that, for example, they do a lot of rocketry and things like that. So they engage with local companies that do that, and they get them out to the schools. So it's basically to get the schools that are forward thinking, that are giving their kids opportunities in new industries, with new technologies, to think outside the square.
It's fantastic. So this is select high schools that have signed up for this program.
That's correct. So to be an aerospace school, all you need to do is liaise with the program, Joe and Nat, and they take it from there. I think from memory, there's 22 schools involved. I'm sure they'd love it if there was 122. A lot of young people nowadays, I guess if they're thinking trades, they think along the lines of, mechanic, car mechanic, or an electrician, or a carpenter, that type of thing. And my way of engaging with young people is if they think along those lines, then you can work in aviation. We've got way cooler stuff. And ours flies at 35,000 feet. So if you're thinking about being a mechanic, work on a plane, work on a helicopter. If you're thinking about being an electrician, avionics engineer. It's all transferable. Like, if you're that mindset and that way of thinking, a lot of young people only look at planes and go, well, that gets me to my holiday destination. They don't think of what it takes to make it fly and keep it flying.
So if we've got students or schools who are interested in exploring that further, the Aerospace Gateway website would probably be a good place to start and connect, as you say, with Nat or Joe and talk about developing that. It sounds so exciting, Steve. Is the aviation industry exciting at the moment? How are things going?
Well, in a nutshell, in a word, to answer your question, yes, it is. It's, I guess a lot of people know of the industry only from what they see on TV or read on social media. And it's true, there haven't been all the planes flying, certainly commercial and stuff like that at the height of the pandemic, borders closing and all that type of stuff. But now borders are opening, and not only domestically, but internationally. And even during the pandemic, every aircraft registered in Australia, if you take that into account, roughly only 30% of it is commercial aviation. The other 70% is general aviation. And in that regard, general aviation continued to fly through the pandemic. So they continued to fly, they continued to put hours on their frames, hours on their engines. They still needed to be serviced, they still needed to be maintained, and the only person that can do that are qualified maintenance engineers. Coming out of the pandemic now, we have seen a huge demand. Huge isn't even a word that I can't even, unfathomable demand for apprentices in our industry. And as soon as we're identifying young people on our Cert 4 courses that are graduating, passing their subjects, looking to graduate, they're getting job offers before they even finish. They're getting job offers a third of the way into their course. You pass your course, there's a job here waiting for you with us. This year we've done the first ever, what we call our FAME course. Our technical training manager came up with the concept of FAME, which is Female Aviation Maintenance Engineers. So we now have a class of 20 female Cert 4 students, and they're all going along now. They started in January, so we're about a third of the way into their courses, and some of them have already got job offers. Industry received that very, very well. It's effectively going to double the amount of female aviation maintenance engineers in the Brisbane region. So it's certainly a busy time, an exciting time, and basically, as long as they pass their courses, any student in a Cert 4 and they show the right attitude and aptitude, they're guaranteed an apprenticeship. We just can't fill apprenticeships at the moment. We don't have enough people.
At the Queensland Air Museum, we see ourselves as not only preserving the past and honouring that and, allowing people in the present to experience the history of aviation, but to see our role as the future too, and to see whether the QAM might in some way be able to partner with whoever it is who's interested, be it Aviation Australia or Aerospace Gateway or whoever it is, or the schools, to provide either a venue or mentorship or inspiration even. There's something about coming into the QAM and touching those aircraft and looking inside them and sitting in the cockpits that can stimulate and inspire inquiry and learning. And so we would love to think that we could be a part of that too. But good on you for what you're doing. It's so nice to hear positive stories and to hear all the energy of what's going on at the moment.
Well, I've been to QAM and a couple of times over the years, and I've always, I am a firm believer, and anyone that knows me will attest to this, that to understand where we're going, you've got to understand where we've come from. So you look back at the first flight, and I say this to the kids literally on day one, and that's in 1903. The Wright brothers got together and flew. I think it was about 103 feet. I think late last year, Qantas did a flight from South America to Darwin and a repatriation. It was 15,700 odd kilometres. So, in the space of 19 years or 118 years, we've come so far as an industry. And I say to these young people that are considering careers in aviation, who's to say that you don't come up with the next big idea for aviation? Just because it hasn't been thought of doesn't mean it's not doable, and doesn't mean that your idea isn't good. Speak up and tell us what you're thinking. We never know where the next big idea is coming from.
Picture yourself strapped into the pilot's seat of an F-111 strike aircraft. Introducing the Queensland Air Museum's ultimate F-111 experience. Spend a couple of hours with our guides, RAAF Air Vice Marshal retired David Dunlop and Air Commodore retired Peter Growder, who will take you through the experience in a clear, easy to understand and highly enjoyable manner. After a mission briefing, you'll be introduced to the aircraft features and controls before strapping into the cockpit to go through your checklist procedures. Bookings are restricted to a maximum of 2 people in a group, so personal attention is assured. The ultimate F-111 experience. Costs and booking details are available on the Queensland Air Museum website. So, a lot happening in aviation at present. Lots of energy and optimism and many opportunities. And coupled with that, there is a sense of enthusiasm for the future of the Queensland Air Museum and where it might fit into and contribute to those opportunities. Bill Trail is the president of the Queensland Air Museum. Bill has had a long association with aviation, gaining his pilot's licence at his own expense as a teenage boy, and then going on after some 22,000 hours of flying to be a check captain with FedEx on Boeing 777s. I got some time with Bill recently to ask him how he sees the developing role of the museum and what dreams he has for its future. All right, thank you very much for talking to me, Bill. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us how you see the future of this museum, the Queensland Air Museum? Where would it fit into the future story of aerospace, exploration, aviation in the future?
I think from what I'm getting feedback-wise from a lot of the students involved with STEM and whatever through their schools of technology, one of the things that they are telling me that they're very interested, because I've been doing a survey on this and I'll be putting all this data together, they are very, very interested in the lead-ups to and the breakthroughs in technology in aerospace. They themselves are a generation that are going to they're already pretty close to the edge of space, and we're going to break through the edge of space out into the universe as the technology increases.
And how do you see the museum playing a part in that?
Well, as far as the museum, I mean, the museum is part of that journey. We have, up until recently, been pretty well focused on history, the early era of aviation and to where we are now, and the museum's been very, very good at capturing a lot of displays in aircraft, and the museum's worked very hard with volunteers to restore aircraft to display, for presentation and whatever. So, where does the museum fit between now and the future? Well, the museum needs to migrate from where it is to the science and technology of the future. I have to say that, and this again caught me totally by surprise, unexpected, they are really, really interested in understanding the characters of the pioneers. The Nancy Bird Waltons, the Kingswood Smiths, people like that. They want to understand what drove them to do what they did before their time. They were the groundbreakers, they were the leaders, they were the futurists, they were the dreamers. They want to understand their stories, they want to understand their personalities, and they want to hear their stories. It is something they are asking for. It was quite amazing to hear young people talk about that. Really, the museums of the world now, including us, have to be on the edge of technology.
I've heard you talk about seeing the museum, this physical location even, as a hub internationally through technology for conferencing or for education or for research. Is this the kind of thing that you have in mind also?
Oh, absolutely. I don't have anything else in mind but that.
Well, describe how you would see that operating.
Let's just give an example. If we're talking about the edge of space or the universe or where mankind is going with the universe to Mars, because that is the aerospace industry of the future. We're pretty well at the limit of piloted aircraft. This is the last generation now we see of piloted aircraft, be it passenger or be it military. There is all this artificial intelligence that will drive this into the future, and the propulsion systems will be hyperdrive type systems. It'll be systems that will take people from Australia to America in 35 minutes. This is all the future. So I guess the museum needs to have the ability to demonstrate how that happens, what they can touch through kinesthetics, what can they touch, what can they feel, what can they put their hand out on, and what can through technologies they can physically touch, and it actually reacts and it tells them what it actually does. I am a solar propulsion unit, and you can switch on a virtual power supply and that thing will actually operate in your face. And that's the sort of thing that we're talking about.
So you're talking about interactive experiences for people who come here. What about for people who physically can't attend this site, but who might be part of a network of research or development?
Well, that's one of the reasons we're looking at the conferencing facility. COVID has taught us how to embrace technology and use it effectively. And the world is not such a big place after all with this technology. We are looking at having a theaterette. We are looking at having a conferencing centre, a planetarium, and that conferencing could be 24/7 conferencing. It could be a centre open to this entire new aerospace park that's going in here where we are actually located. It is an aerospace park that's been looked at now. The designs of it are actually well down the track, and by the end of this decade, this park where this museum is will be an aerospace technology park, and it will be part of a global system with manufacturing, design, technology, enhancements, whatever. So by having this conferencing facility, people can be actually communicating in real time with counterparts in other parts of the world. So we want to offer that, not just for the museum, but we want to offer that to our partners out there in the aerospace industry, and we want to provide something for them to utilise to their advantage as well.
And without giving away any confidential conversations at this point? Has the museum been talking to other industries and other organisations?
In actual fact, as late as just last week, and it's amazing when you go out into the world and have a look at what's happening. And I guess if we in the country, in the country we're in, do not participate, we will get left behind. So I think this is what the Queensland Air Museum can offer industry that other museums aren't doing. And we would want to be the Queensland Air Museum, but we want to be part of a global industry. It's still a not-for-profit organisation, but we want to offer a service through a museum.
Somebody who's a young child now in 2022 comes into this place in 6 to 10 years' time, as you're talking 2028, maybe 2030, and they're a teenager, they're being educated, they're considering their future. What would you hope that young person who comes in here in 6, 8, 10 years' time would experience when they come here?
I've said this to my own grandchildren and their parents, and I say it to everyone. If a young person was to come to this museum, they've understood what it means to dream. They go away, they develop their own dream, and that dream will become a reality if the opportunity arises.
Just to wrap up, Bill, I spoke last week with one of the founding members of the QAM, and he was talking about the journey that led, as you say, through all kinds of challenges and hardship to this point. And he was referring to a comment in the visitor's book that he had read, which said, "We'll be good when it's finished." It sounds to me like this museum is not finished.
This is where it's at. It's another generation's turn to dream.
So that's our episode. And that is Season 1 of Mac 1, the podcast of the Queensland Air Museum, Caloundra. Thank you so much to those who have listened. I know some of you have listened to every single episode, and I've appreciated the feedback, the comments, the suggestions along the way. I've appreciated most of all the fact that you have shared and passed on this podcast to others. It's been such an honour to interview and speak with such interesting people, and I hope that you have enjoyed listening to edited versions of their stories. I've kept the episodes to around 30 minutes because realistically we don't have unlimited time to listen to these stories, but I've listened for a lot longer than 30 minutes to each person, I can assure you, and it has been an utter privilege. Mac 1 will be back in July of 2022 with Season 2, and I can assure you, you will enjoy the conversations you hear from the people who have already agreed to be lined up to speak and be a part of that. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. The Queensland Air Museum is not finished, and that is a good thing. And we look forward to being a part of whatever the future may bring. We invite you to be a part of that future too. Come on down and visit us, 7 Pathfinder Drive, Caloundra, right near the Caloundra Airport. We're open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day except Christmas Day and Good Friday. We would love to see you. Come and visit us soon.